Hi, I'm Greg Hunter. This is the weekly news wrap-up for Friday, September 5th, 2014. And once again, the Ukrainian crisis is the top story in the weekly news wrap-up. I mean, the fallout from this is profound. It's anywhere from a financial cascade to nuclear war, and that is why that Ukraine crisis is the top story. Some good news here, and it's but you know, the NATO leaders skeptical of Russia-Ukraine ceasefire. The leaders are skeptical of the ceasefire that is ongoing right now. They have reached a ceasefire. And I'm going to add to that the skepticism of this ceasefire. And I hope that this ceasefire is not a ploy to give NATO and the West time to deploy more troops and deploy more military hardware into Ukraine. I hope this isn't a ploy where they say, well, you know, we tried to talk to Russia and they just wouldn't talk. So it's, you know, this is an excuse for war. I had Bill Holter from Miles Franklin on this week, and he says, you know, they need something to point to because they know the system is in terrible shape, and they need something to point at, like, oh, it was Russia that caused this financial cascade, this big problem. It was Russia that caused all this stuff. And, you know, Russia is involved in this situation. I mean, otherwise, why would Putin be on television in Russia laying out a seven-point plan, you know, to end hostilities in eastern Ukraine? Why is Ukraine negotiating with Russia? Because Russia is involved. And I know the propaganda has been wild on both sides, especially on the side of the West. I mean, they came out and they retracted this, that, you know, Russia had invaded. Well, it wasn't a World War II style invasion. That was overblown. But Russia invaded in a stealth kind of way. And let me explain myself. You had the Ukrainian troops a few weeks ago, you know, backing up the pro-Russian separatists. I mean, to the point where they had this big, you know, the humanitarian transport line coming, you know, from Russia, this big convoy. They held them up at the border. Remember that? There were reports about, you know, that the Ukrainian troops might commit genocide against the Russian separatists. And I think, no doubt, they would have. I think they would have. It was an ugly, nasty battle, and they wanted to end it quickly. And all of a sudden, they had this, you know, reports of invasion. It wasn't really invasion. But listen, Russia is involved. Even the Russian ambassador to the United Nations says, "Oh, well, we have troops, you know, that are volunteering there. You know, they didn't ride their bikes in shorts and then go down there and get a weapon. They brought their weapons. And why wouldn't Russia be involved? It's not a surprise they're involved, and this is my major salient point that, you know, NATO and the West knows that Russia is going to go to the mat on this. I mean, they had this coup all the way back in February. You can check my weekly news wrap-ups where I was talking about how, you know, they had a coup while the Winter Olympics were on. And I keep asking this question, what did they think Russia was going to do? Oh, sure, put a NATO country on our border and send missiles in there. Of course Russia's going to go to the mat over Ukraine. And there's now, from President Obama, there's talk of, you know, NATO, you know, accepting Ukraine into NATO. And, you know, France and Germany, and no. They don't want to do that because it's going to inflame the situation. They're having talks about this now. And, you know, of course, this is a profound national security story for Russia. Of course, they're going to be involved, which brings me to what do they expect Russia was going to do? And I think they are either so stupid that they don't know war is coming, or it's too stupid to be stupid. They know they're going to push Russia into war. They know this is going to implode the system, and then they'll blame Russia for it, which that's the problem. All those little people watching this, you know, Game of Thrones go on, and that, you know, they drive, you know, this situation into an all-out war that could turn nuclear. Now, I don't think Russia wants to do that. I think they've been trying to ratchet it back, but of course Russia is involved, and we know they were going to be involved. Now we hear, while this ceasefire is going on, that, you know, multiple different stories that they have planned war games in western Ukraine, even though they're not a NATO country. You know that the U.S. and the West has their own advisors in Ukraine. You know that France was going to deliver these amphibious ships, the huge ships that carry, a dozen tanks and, I don't know, a dozen helicopters and 100 vehicles and 500, men, an army of 450. These are huge ships. Well, a month or two ago, France was like, we're going to deliver these ships. We need the money. France needs the money, and they do. And now, this past week, France has suspended the sale of these ships. Oh, that's going to make nice with the Russians. They're going to think that's a good idea. That they didn't get what they paid for, that they contracted for, and now these ships are being held up with France. And on top of that, new sanctions for Russia. Oh, that's going to settle things down. They're going to put new sanctions on Russia. And meanwhile, Russia is trying to negotiate a land bridge to Crimea, which, of course, this is what started the whole thing off. They had 25,000 troops there by treaty. They annexed Crimea, and now they want a land bridge, that's what the reports are, to Crimea. And Russia's going to go to the mat over this. And this is very disruptive, and they're going to do more disruptive to the economies, especially in the EU. Now they're talking about more sanctions. And out this week, it's official. The European economies are in the tank. Even Germany is having trouble. Italy is in recession. France is having a hard time. France has some banks that are in deep, deep trouble, and I wonder if they use that as leverage, the U.S., use that as leverage over France to stop the shipping of those ships. And they did. And these sanctions are going to do nothing but cause more economic strife and pain, especially in the European Union. And this is the kind of scenario that can either A, cause war, or B, can cause NATO to disintegrate. As I said, France and Germany do not want to allow Ukraine into NATO. They don't. But yet, more troops are going up to the Eastern European countries. More supplies are going to Eastern European countries. And this doesn't look like it's settling down one bit. It looks and it appears to be getting worse, which is the major salient point of the story. This is getting worse. No matter who you like, no matter who you blame, no matter what propaganda is true or false, this is clearly getting worse, and that's the warning I would like to sound to people. This is not getting better. All the signs are it's getting worse, and I really wonder if the intention isn't to drive a war from the West to Russia because of the BRICS countries and the getting away from the dollar and the trading energy between China and Russia now in rubles. They've fast forward that. This is like old fighter trying to, I heard this somewhere, trying to throw haymakers, and he's in late rounds and he can't fight the way he used to. It just looks bad. That's the point with all this. The other big story out there is the Islamic State. It's now the size of the UK. This is in between eastern Syria and western Iraq. And, the president did nothing. I mean, they were JV. Months ago that he was warned, he said, oh, nobody told me. The security, the security people said, oh, no, we did warn you. The intelligence people, we warned you. And then they came out and said that he was warned. He came out and was talking about how this was a JV team. I said months ago when this was going on, well, it's not nice to arm people to bomb people you armed. And I was saying this more than a year ago. You can check the weekly news wrap-ups about how, the U.S. is arming these Syrian rebels, and they are Al-Qaeda. Even John Kerry said, well, 20%, maybe 20%, 1 in 5. European press had the Al-Qaeda, a component of the Syrian rebels, at 1 in 2, 50%. And this is the people that we were arming. And of course, there's the myth of this arming the moderate Muslims. When they're fighting side by Al-Qaeda and somebody needs a grenade or cover or a weapon or ammunition, aren't you going to give it to the guy that's fighting with you so you don't die? Of course, yes. And then we have, ISIS coming down into Iraq and overrunning Mosul and taking all these arms and all this money and all this stuff. And even back in June when Mosul fell, nothing, didn't do anything. And, the Iraqis were wanting, please help us bomb, use your forces. Finally, the president did in late August. But I got to tell you that this is too stupid to be stupid. They must have wanted to let ISIL, the Islamic State, get stronger. And then they're selling oil on the black market. Well, listen, oil is not some small little internet business. I mean, it takes pumps and pipelines and trucks and shipping. And well, I don't understand why they don't sanction that. Why don't they sanction countries getting this oil? Why don't we target these facilities? They're making millions of dollars a day. Why don't we go after their money? I mean, the president comes out and says we're going to degrade and destroy. And then in the same sentence or two, in the same paragraph, he's like, well, maybe we can manage them. Like, what? And then you hear Joe Biden giving a speech this week. We're going to follow them to the gates of hell. Where were these guys back in, March, April, May, June, when Mosul fell? Where were they? It was a JV team. And it's like they wanted them to get stronger. Whether they did want them to get stronger or they didn't, the fact is they got stronger. The Islamic State. And it is a real problem. And these people have real followings with real money backing them and real U.S. equipment behind them. And we don't appear to be, rushing in there other than these 100 airstrikes or so. I mean, eastern Syria and western, a huge ground. I mean, something the size of the UK is huge. 100 airstrikes in that space? I mean, will you knock out a few tanks, a few vehicles? This is too stupid, I think, to be stupid. And is this an invented boogeyman? And whether it's invented or it's something that just happened because the U.S. was stupid, listen. This is trouble. This is much, much trouble. One of the other big hot spots. Oh, and on top of it, we had Libya, our embassy fall. Over in Libya, the terrorists there have made off with nearly a dozen aircraft, and this from the same type of people that cuts the heads off journalists and puts the gruesome videos on television, on YouTube. They've taken those down to YouTube's credit, but that they try to put that out there for terror. So I just gotta wonder, really, if this is just simply too stupid to be stupid, but it's a major, major problem in the world. Meanwhile, after all the warnings of terror attacks and all the problems that we have with people warning that ISIS, the Islamic State fighters are already here in the U.S. They had some of these guys die who were working at airports in Minneapolis, and what does Eric Holder and the Justice Department do? Well, do they open an investigation on who might be here? Do they open an investigation on where are these 6,000 student visas? Where are these people? Do they open an investigation on how many people flooded across the border that, used these kids, this diversion with our Border Patrol agents, as a cover to get across the border? What did the Justice? No, they didn't do any of that. They didn't open an investigation in any of that. What did the Justice Department do? They opened a civil rights investigation into the Ferguson Police Department. The Ferguson Police Department is a higher priority than opening an investigation on what's the terror impact here in the U.S. Where could terrorists hit us? Where are these student visas? A full court press. Let's find these people now. Let's get down on the No, none of that happened. No, it's the Ferguson Police Department and this shooting of this 18-year-old kid that was unarmed. Who knows what the full details are of this situation. But that's the investigation that gets opened up. A civil rights investigation into that. And even when Governor Perry and many other people say, listen, the Islamic State, terrorists are already here and they mean to do us harm. I mean, you're talking about a group of people that is, basically in the Middle East where they just stolen nearly a dozen aircraft. Think they might want to fly one of those into America, which I hope they don't, on the 9/11 anniversary, or maybe make a brand new anniversary of death and destruction to, show America who's in charge and punish up for our ill deeds. You think that might be a black swan that might take down the financial system if they hit the right place in Europe or in the U.S.? And then you have the, Saudi Arabia officials there saying that, well, listen, these terrorists, these Islamic State terrorists are going to be in Europe in a month, in America in 2 months. And other people say they're already here. And the Justice Department opens an investigation and gives a higher priority to the Ferguson Police Department. You have to be kidding me, and I think this just may be too stupid to be stupid as well. Finally, when I heard about a little levity here. Finally, when I heard about these celebrities, these female celebrities, it's terrible. But these female celebrities whose photos, naked photos or scantily clothed photos, their photos were hacked into in the cloud, and they were put on the internet. I thought to myself that I guess the FBI will be investigating that, even though they never made a case on any of the bankers that admitted to laundering money for terrorists. Even though there are bankers, big bankers that admitted to helping Bernie Madoff, even though there are big bankers that have admitted to all sorts of crimes that add up to trillions of dollars. I'm talking about big bankers. I'm thinking, the FBI, nude celebrity photos. Yes, leaked. FBI investigates. The FBI is investigating. Let me get that. Hold it there. Hold it. There you go. Focus it. There you go. A little bit more. There you go. Hold on. The FBI is investigating these nude photos. I'm trying to get it to focus for you. There you go. If I could hold it still. Yeah. Anyway, you know what I mean. The FBI saw the headline. The FBI is investigating these nude photos, and to me, it just tells me, wow, you talk about a country in decline. We have major possibilities of terrorist attacks, real attacks, and or false flag attacks by somebody or groups of people or our own government or other governments that want to destroy us. And the FBI is committing manpower to investigate leaked celebrity photos. That really is just plain stupid. Thank you so much for supporting USA Watchdog with your comments and your donations. That really helps us out. That's the way I see it. I'm Greg Hunter. Have a nice weekend, and fear not.